Welcome to S.A.V.E 2022 guest speaker event. My name is Dan Linderman and I am the S.A.V.E chair and your host for tonight's event. We're very happy that you could join us for what we hope will be an informative program. Just so you know, the webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website at www.savepa.org. Founded 25 years ago in 1997, S.A.V.E.'s mission is to preserve the quality of life and community character of Southern Chester County, Pennsylvania, through smart growth principles that support safe transportation, agriculture, villages, and the environment. Our vision is for Southern Chester County to be an inclusive and sustainable community, characterized by protected rural countryside with vibrant urban centers that are connected by uncongested scenic roads and supported by efficient and effective infrastructure. The program tonight will include updates from PennDOT and the Chester County Planning Commission, followed by Tom Daniels' presentation, The Farm of the Future and Some Good Things in Southern Chester County. A Q&A session will conclude this evening. For the Q&A, we'll use the feature within Zoom for participants to ask questions. You're more than welcome to post questions during the updates and presentations, but they will be held until the end of the program. It's the QA button down at the bottom of Zoom. You can open up the interface and participate throughout the presentation. When during the presentations, you can also upvote questions by clicking the thumbs up icon on a particular question to raise the priority of those getting answered. But before we begin, we'd like to share a short video honoring our founder, Ricky Saunders, and S.A.V.E.'s 25th anniversary.
Hello, everyone. George Hunt, Executive Director of S.A.V.E. I'm here at the Brandywine River Museum, here with Ricky Saunders, community leader and renowned artist, in front of her amazing statue, Tipping Points. The Board of Directors would like to give this plaque to Ricky on behalf of S.A.V.E., Safety, Agriculture, Villages, and Environment. We recognize our founder, Ricky Morley Saunders, for her commitment to the character of Southern Chester County, Pennsylvania, for her foresight in recognizing threats to the region, for her vision that Route 41 could be a safe roadway that conserves its corridors, community, farmland, and natural historic resources, for creating S.A.V.E. and galvanizing the community to promote a safe alternative to highway expansion, and for her guidance and support over the last 25 years, which have enabled S.A.V.E. to advocate for sound infrastructure and smart growth. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, George. And I want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart. This means so much to me. And I am so grateful to accept this, not just for myself, but all the people. I mean, all the extraordinary people that joined in for S.A.V.E. And that's Phyllis Wyeth and Frolic, and George, my husband, my daughter in the beginning. So many amazing people came together, scientists and environmental defense. Everything just fell into place because it was the right thing to do. Like Tipping Point really stands for fortitude and going after one's passion and seeing it through and being determined. And I am so grateful for people like George, for Blythe and Dempsey and all the people before me that took care of S.A.V.E. and have carried it forward. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I accept this for all of us.
Thank you. It started with you.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Tim Stevenson, PennDOT District 6 Assistant District Engineer for Design. Tim oversees the district's design program and will provide updates on PennDOT projects in the Route 41 corridor within Londonderry, London Grove, and Avondale.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to bring up a presentation here. And can you guys see my screen? Hang on, let me hit share. There we go. Now, can you see my screen? Very good, thank you. Just a quick say, Ricky has not aged. That video could have been from 15 years ago. She's doing something right. So thank you all for having me here again to speak with S.A.V.E. And I want to give a quick update on, as to what PennDOT's doing here in Southern Chester County. Of course, I'm from District 6, which is the 5-county Philadelphia metropolitan area: Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery. We've had some change in our leadership in the district in the last year. The names that are highlighted in black are people that have changed positions in this past year. Lou Belmont became our district executive to lead the overall district. Andrew Furmans, now our acting ADE or senior ADE for maintenance. Manny Anastasiadis is our acting senior ADE for operations, and Manny's actually going to be retiring at the end of December. Gene Blom, our long-standing press officer and deputy communications director before becoming our legislative affairs lead, retired. They haven't filled his position yet. And if you were to see our building here in the top, on the right side here, I will tell you there's been changes at the office. We've, in this past year or 2 years, we've built a parking garage on what would be the left-hand side of the building. And we actually built a traffic management center, or expanded the building to include a traffic management center on the right side of the building. So just a quick thing about design. Anybody can see PennDOT's projects that are funded for design by going to the link at the bottom of this screen here, where we have an interactive map. This is what I show here is primarily the Chester County area. Any of the segments in red are where we have a funded transportation project or capital improvement project. You can clearly see on the corridor the Route 1 reconstruction project we have for the Kennett Oxford bypass, and then up in the middle of the county, the Coatesville Downingtown bypass, and down the bottom right corner towards Delaware is the 896 safety improvement project, just to highlight. So if you were to click on any one of those red dots, it would bring up a more detailed information on each one of the projects. And there's actually another report that you could then click on that would tell you when the anticipated earliest date a project might proceed to construction, if we identified a let date for the project yet. So, but why you had me here was to talk primarily about what we're doing on 41. So quickly, I'll start with our projects to the north. The northernmost project that we're improving or proposing to do an improvement on 41 is at the 926 intersection, where we're looking to convert that skewed intersection of 926 and 41 into a modern roundabout. The preferred alternative was picked for this, I believe, a couple year or so ago. And we're heavy in the final design process, as well as we've gone forward with making our offers on right-of-way acquisition and negotiations. We're doing negotiations with property owners. We're also doing permitting with DEP and of course, dialoguing with the County Conservation District as well. And then we're doing utility relocation coordination. I had hoped that we were going to be able to be beginning construction on the project sometime next year, but I imagine that these final design activities are going to run almost all of 2023, with hopefully us proceeding to construction in 2024. The 41 improvement project in the village of Chatham at the intersection of 841. This project is still in the preliminary engineering phase, and it's been for some time at this point. We are getting close to advancing and having a preferred alternative. We recently had meetings with historic people to discuss some of the alternatives that we've seen and defined, and you see on the website. We still have two alternatives, and we've yet to identify a preferred alternative. We're in the process of putting together an alternatives analysis report, which we intend to then share with the historic resource professionals, as well as the Section 106 consulting parties, and kind of bring them up to speed with what we're doing and how we came to a preferred alternative. We're hoping to be able to have a preferred alternative in about couple months time. We're getting close to being able to do so. But once we've picked a preferred alternative, that does not end the environmental process. As you may know, the village of Chatham is a historic district, and there are individual houses or contributing resources within the district. And so the proposed project's going to have an effect on those resources. So we'll be dialoguing with the Section 106 consulting parties to see how we can minimize and mitigate the effects for the project. And then still doing public involvement activities. I imagine that process will run at least through, preliminary engineering will run at least through 2023. We have a big project, as I showed you first, one of the earlier screens on Route 1, where we're reconstructing Route 1. This graphic here shows that we've kind of broken the Route 1 corridor up into 4 major construction contracts. And as part of this project, we are going to be reconstructing all of Route 1 and most likely replacing all of the overhead bridges. And we're also looking to address all of the interchanges where they tie into the connecting roadways. And so what again, coming back to 41, the intersection of Route 41 and Route 1 is one of those interchanges that we're looking to address. And this graphic shows here our proposed treatments for that we're looking to take the one signalized intersection for the southbound movements and turn it into a hybrid roundabout, as well as take the unsignalized or stop controlled intersection for the northbound ramps and put it also as a hybrid roundabout. This looks like it's going to handle traffic for a long time and should work sufficiently for the corridor. So this is what we're currently advancing in conjunction with London Grove Township. Public involvement on this one, again, we're in preliminary engineering phase, and I don't know if I said that. We'll probably be in the preliminary engineering phase for this project for most of next year, and probably doing public involvement activities for the project next year. Just to this, I guess, south of this one, Route 1, we are also improving interchange at 841. And again, taking what would be stop controlled intersections and converting them into roundabouts at the terminus of the ramps for 841. And then further to the south and outside of the Route 1 Section 200 project, but in the Route 1 Section 100 project, we're going to be taking the interchange at 896 and also turning those ramp termini into roundabouts for the treatments for those 2 intersections. This project is in final design, and we are actually starting to work on preparing what would be right-of-way plans and things along that line. Construction is still a couple of years out for this project, as that activity is final design is going to take a couple of years probably for us to complete that for this project. Back to the 41 corridor. Of course, we're progressing a project or 2 projects on Route 41 in Avondale Borough. There is the county programmed a project for us to look at the intersection at State Street and First Street and 41, doing that intersection. And when we were looking at that intersection, we of course noted the condition of the bridge immediately to the south of the intersection. So we've now programmed a project to look at doing improvements to the bridge over White Clay Creek. Both of these projects are really in the very early stages of preliminary engineering. As you may know, Avondale Borough was identified as a historic district as part of the 41 project a couple decades ago. And both PHMC and the department agreed that we should update the historic resource forms and documents that we have for the historic district. Unfortunately, we did not agree on what the boundaries for the resource should be and what contributed and some of that documentation. So after having a dispute with PHMC for some time, we engaged Federal Highway Administration, and we've actually now elevated the whole dialogue to the keeper of the National Register. And so we're in the process now of having dialogue with both the Museum Commission, Federal Highway, and the keeper of the National Register to try to get closure on what everybody believes or should be the boundaries for the Avondale Historic District, and to identify its period of significance, what makes it significant, and the various resources that contribute to that district. So we're hoping to have that kind of dialogue completed sometime in the spring of next year, as we're still, again, just having that coordination with all those parties. And I should say, once we've gotten clearance on what the boundaries are, then we'll know how to proceed with advancing those projects. And you'll see our website getting updated as we try to update our website in general and provide opportunities for public input through our website. And I spoke previously just highlighted the 896 project. I don't know if many people were aware, but we are looking to take the intersection at 896 and 841 and take it from also being a multi-way stop to turning it into a modern roundabout. This project is in final design, and we are in the process of doing right-of-way acquisition presently. We'll probably be doing acquisition of right-of-way for all of next year again, and most likely this project wouldn't go to construction until sometime in 2024. But it'll be big improvements for safety on 896 when this job is done. And lastly, this is just a rendering of what the office looks like from the first slide that I showed you, just showing you how there's a parking garage on the left and a modern expansion of a building on the TMC on the right. We're actually getting ready to open our brand new building probably in January of next year. And that is my end of my presentation. So I'll pass this back to you, Dan.
Thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. Up next is Brian O'Leary, Executive Director of the Chester County Planning Commission. Over to you, Brian.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join you. I'm sharing a presentation here. Let me just get it up and running into a slideshow. There we go. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes to describe things going on at the County Planning Commission, what we're working on, and highlighting these things very briefly. So I'm going to go through the information quite quickly, but hopefully there'll be an opportunity later on if you have any questions, or you feel free to contact me to follow up. One of the things we have going on now is our open space initiative, and we've created this area on our website where you can look up what different municipalities are doing to encourage open space through zoning or through purchasing of open space. And I'm happy to report that we have over 30% of the county is permanently preserved. We're also reaching out to all 73 municipalities in the county with information about open space in the county. And here's a image of what we're doing with what we're sharing with them. But then we're also including specific information about that community. And this will be going out over the next few months. And what this information highlights is what do they have preserved? What tools are they currently using? What might they want to consider adding to expand their open space preservation? Another program that we are kind of wrapping up now is we did outreach to all the county's municipalities on their environmental regulations and what they had on the books and what they might consider expanding. And we had a bit of a summary piece here that I'm highlighting here, as well as an area on our website where you can look at all the different natural resources in the county and kind of figure out where your community fits in. I want to highlight a couple things on the historic preservation front. First, Chester County has created a America 250 PA commission for the county. We're up and running. We're trying to kind of establish ourselves and how we are going to be involved in everything. If you're interested in being involved, please let me know. There'll be lots of committees that are organizing events, looking at education, a whole variety of activities. Then the county is also in the process of a heritage tourism plan, and we're really looking how can we strengthen our historic sites and their ability to handle tourists and visitors. And most of our visitors are going to be internal or people coming from the region. So how can we improve how that happens? On the housing front, we're considering continuing our A+ Homes initiative and really looking to have more affordably priced homes. This really is a big issue in Chester County, and it is affecting many of our residents, the price of housing. On the agricultural front, we're also doing some outreach to municipalities on making it easier for farmers to do a wide range of uses and to be entrepreneurial in how they can address their business needs. And this is in conjunction with a recent agricultural economic development strategic plan that was completed and adopted by the commissioners in March of this year, talking about a variety of ways all the different people involved and organizations involved in ag can strengthen our agricultural industry. If you're interested in seeing this plan, I encourage you to go to www.chescofarming.org, although you can also get to it through the Planning Commission website. Lots going on in the transportation front. We're doing two big plans at once. I guess we're gluttons for punishment, but the first is a county trail plan. And in the county trail plan, this is kind of just a little bit of a summary of the timeline. It began mid-year, should be ending by the end of 23. And what we'll be doing is establishing the goals, finishing up an inventory of our trails, and network analysis. Where are our missing links? Where do we want to concentrate our efforts, recommendations, and implementation plan? There will be more coming out on that, surveys and opportunities to mark your preferences on an interactive online map. We're also simultaneously redoing our 2014 public transportation plan on the same time frame. That'll be 2020, mid-2022 to the end of 23. And we are going to follow our old kind of structure that we did the plan in. But I wanted to note that what we're looking at is going to be happening, and SEPTA is proposing this, and other systems may go this way, from fixed route buses to microtransit. And how is that shift going to occur? And then the final thing I wanted to mention on transportation is the Route 441 corridor improvement study is moving forward, or getting ready to move forward. That is through our Vision Partnership Program. We gave a grant for $45,000. Consultant chosen is going to be McMahon, and that should get up and running in January of next year. Another thing I wanted to highlight is we're producing design guidelines for our 6 landscapes that are shown here in the county. And 4 of those design guides have been completed. Most recently, the Rural Center Design Guide. This would apply to a place like Cochranville, for example. And it's really to help municipalities figure out how do we do some of our planning in these locations, and then what kind of design elements do we want to see incorporated in. We're currently now working on the Rural Design Guide, and then there will be an agricultural land guide. And then wrapping up my quick presentation or overview of some things going on, I'm highlighting here a part of our website where we have a lot of different information. It's called the Municipal Corner. And I particularly want to emphasize our planning e-tools. We have over 90 guides to different topics. I'll give you just a couple of examples. One is historic preservation. So here's a list of all the different tools that we have related to historic preservation. Another is kind of utilities in our environment, and here's a list of some of the guides in that area. So once again, there are over 90 of them. Encourage you to check them out if you're exploring a specific topic area. You can get all this information at the County Planning Commission website, jescoplanning.org, and always feel free to reach out to me with any questions you might have. And that's my presentation. So thank you, Dan, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on.
Thank you, Brian. Lots going on. I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Tom Daniels. Tom is a Crossways professor in the Department of City and Regional Planning at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Daniels has degrees from Harvard University, University of Newcastle, and Oregon State University. He's a noted land use scholar, having authored numerous peer-reviewed articles and books as senior author, including the Small Town Planning Handbook, now in its 3rd edition. An agricultural economist by training, Tom is well known as one of the leading thinkers and practitioners of farmland preservation. He previously served as director of the Agricultural Preserve Board of Lancaster County for almost 10 years, and frequently serves as a consultant to state and local governments and land trusts. His most recent book is The Law of Agricultural Land Preservation in the United States. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you all out there. Good evening. It's a pleasure to meet with you. I only wish that we were able to meet in person. I need to tell you the real reason I was invited to speak this evening, and that's because George Hunt is a former student of mine. He took my land preservation course while he was doing a master's degree in environmental studies at Penn, and we've stayed in touch ever since. So I think you're very fortunate to have George as your executive director of S.A.V.E. The first thing I want to say is that I think we're all very fortunate to live in Southeast Pennsylvania. We have great access to major cities, and we have wonderful access to absolutely beautiful countryside. And I think we all share the desire to maintain the quality of life that we all enjoy. On the one hand, there are some challenges. I know I've tried to turn left from Route 41 onto Route 1 many times, and that can be a challenge. But on the other hand, we do have many great things going on here in Southeast Pennsylvania that I hope to touch on a little bit later. First, let me see if I can share my screen with you. Does that work? Okay. So first of all, I would like to take you to the new Bolton Center, which of course is part of the University of Pennsylvania, the vet school. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on there. Many of you know the new Bolton Center as a world-class equine veterinary facility. But Dean Hoffman, who is, I think, an excellent dean, has some real vision for the future of New Bolton. And a couple of years ago, we began this Farm of the Future project. So the idea is to really transform New Bolton into a demonstration farm, as well as maintaining the veterinary activities there, emphasizing climate smart farming and sustainability. And as part of that effort, earlier this year, Dean Hoffman started this Center for Stewardship, Agriculture, and Food Security, which is headed up by Dr. Tom Parsons. And the real challenge that we have with greenhouse gases in agriculture really comes from animal agriculture. So making animal agriculture part of the solution to climate change mitigation and adaptation is really very, very important. So the new Bolton Center will be this living laboratory to study the impacts of animal agriculture on the environment, wildlife, domestic animals, and humans. And we'll continue to do plenty of outreach to farmers and others in the food supply chain. So here's some of the work that the center is undertaking already. A real emphasis on food security. We want to maintain plentiful, affordable, and safe food. Stewardship agriculture is going to be a big component, as you can see. Again, on the air quality side, greenhouse gas mitigation is a big problem, especially methane from burping cattle. U.S. agriculture produces more than 1/3 of the nation's methane and actually produces more than half of the nation's nitrous oxide. And the nitrous oxide comes from the use of synthetic fertilizer derived from natural gas, such as ammonium nitrate, which is the fertilizer you typically use on corn. And so are there ways that we can reduce methane by better handling livestock manure, for example, and maybe improving the feed that livestock ingest. And I want to point out Dr. Du down there on the lower right-hand side. She's been working quite a while now on feed for livestock that would reduce methane emissions. Animal health is a big issue. Animal welfare, of course, is a big issue. But one of the things we don't often talk about when we talk about farms is biodiversity. And New Bolton is 700 acres and has really quite a bit of diversity in its landscape. There are forests, there's riparian areas. And so the plan is to see if we can have a diverse set of wildlife on the New Bolton site. And that reflects a healthy ecology. And that's certainly going to be good for the environment. On the land side, upcycling of food waste is an interesting issue. The United States wastes as much as 40% of the food that's grown in this country. And that's certainly unfortunate. And if we're going to be landfilling that food waste, literally, the food is completely wasted. So are there ways to use recycling, for example, to turn food waste into compost that we can then turn back into the soil to increase soil productivity? And I'll give you a quick example of this already. San Francisco is a leader in recycling food waste into compost. And my brother happens to live in San Francisco. He's not the most hygienic person I've ever known. But on the other hand, he is very serious about recycling his food waste, which is very good to see. And finally, what's the impact of agriculture and animals on people? And one of the big issues there, of course, is zoonoses there, zoonotic diseases that transfer from animals to humans. And that's what we've been going through basically for the last almost 3 years now. Some of us have had the experience with COVID. And as you know, if you've had it, it's not a whole lot of fun. And certainly the warning that we're hearing is that we can expect more zoonotic diseases in the years to come. So research on those diseases is certainly very, very important. And finally, I think it's important to note that when we talk about producing nutritious food, we have to make it affordable. We have to be able to really feed everybody well in this country and hopefully around the world. So I want to just share with you briefly, I know this is not a lot of numbers to, to kind of glaze over, but one of the things that I think is important to note is that carbon dioxide from agriculture is really a very, very small portion of the overall carbon dioxide emissions that the United States puts in the air every year. You can see it's only 1.3%. We hear a lot in the media about, carbon sequestration in soil, and that certainly is important. But again, it's not agriculture is not a real big source of carbon dioxide. It's good to have carbon in your soil. It increases your soil productivity. It makes your soil more resistant to drought, for example. So it is good to have carbon, and not to lose it. But again, the emissions from agriculture for carbon dioxide are really quite small by comparison, whereas you can see methane is, as of 2020, was 42% of the nation's overall methane emissions. And methane, of course, is about 20 times more potent a heat-trapping gas than carbon dioxide. And if you go down to nitrous oxide, there, over half of nitrous oxide emissions in the US come from agriculture, and nitrous oxide is about 200 times more potent a heat-trapping gas than carbon dioxide. So agriculture really has some things to work on here. So how do we bring animals into regenerative agriculture? And that's going to be, I think, one of the interesting challenges that New Bolton will deal with. Certainly integrating livestock and making more efficient use of livestock manure is going to be extremely important. But good farming practices are also important. Cover crops. I had students from Penn out here in Lancaster a few weeks ago, and I was really impressed at the extent of the cover crops that I was seeing on corn land. So the farmers here have really adopted cover crops, which is great to see. A lot of farmers have already adopted no-till. So that's also basically good for carbon, is that you're not, ripping up the soil with a plow, which emits carbon into the atmosphere. And if we can minimize our chemical inputs, especially the synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, that would be good. Crop rotation is important. And then ultimately, maybe we can increase the biodiversity or the overall ecological health of the farm. Now, New Bolton has been working with the Stroud Water Center, which is not far away, which is an outstanding research center. I know a few people there. And so already New Bolton has had the experts from Stroud work on such things as riparian buffers, and they're going to be obviously doing some stream bank fencing as well. Again, to try to keep nutrients and sediment out of the streams. And one of the plans is to put in these trails to link the New Bolton Center with the Stroud Water Center. Some of you may know this and some of you may not. The New Bolton facility actually has a 25-year easement on 145 acres out of 700 acres of the property. And this was a donated 25-year easement that was done in 2013. So it doesn't expire until 2038. But Dean Joan Hendricks, after this was done, she actually apologized to me because she said, I really should have gotten the Board of Overseers to agree to a perpetual conservation easement, but they didn't want to close off any options, so they only let me do a 25-year easement. And I told her, Joan, that's okay. There will be other chances. And so maybe sometime in the future, you'll see a permanent conservation easement on at least part of the New Bolton Center. By the way, it's not uncommon for educational institutions to sell a perpetual conservation easement on some of their property. The Delaware Valley College, for example, did this through the state of Pennsylvania Farmland Preservation Program a few years ago. So you can see here the New Bolton Center, even though it says 600 acres and it's really 700 acres, is part of a real nice example of landscape preservation. The Cheslin Preserve at 1,200 acres. You've got the Brandywine Creek Greenway. And of course, you've got Longwood Gardens, of which I'm a member, and I'm sure several of you on the call are also members of that wonderful facility as well. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning. And this is from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which has projected that Chester County's population will grow by 30% from 2010 to 2040. In 2010, the population was just under 500,000. By 2020, that was almost 535,000. And the projected population in 2040 is about 650,000. So the challenge is, where do we put another 115,000 people? Where are they going to live? Where are they going to work? Where are they going to shop? How are they going to get to school? How are they going to get clean fresh water? all of these issues. This is something that is very similar to what we face in Lancaster County. We are looking at a similar increase in population, ending up with about 650,000 people by 2040. So Brian talked a bit about Landscapes 3, which is a good county comprehensive plan. Their population projection in landscapes is a little bit different from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, but pretty similar. And Brian went through the basic goals of the plan, protecting a significant portion of the county as preserved farmland, open space, forests, public parks, and nature preserves, guiding development away from sensitive natural resources, providing opportunities for a diverse housing mix. And Brian's absolutely right that affordable housing is a challenge, not only in Chester County, it's a challenge anywhere in the United States today. And how do we meet our travel needs and reduce congestion? That's going to continue to be a challenge. I love asking my students, do you think electric vehicles are going to solve our transportation problems? And they always shake their heads no, because it's just going to be a different form of cars on the road. Brian also showed you this way of organizing the landscape, everything from the cities in red to the suburban centers in orange, suburban areas in yellow, rural centers in brown, and then in the olive, rural areas, and in green, the agricultural areas. Chester County has really done a phenomenal job of land preservation, and I want to thank Chester County for really taking the lead on this. This is something that some of you may recall. Back in 1989, Peter Hausman really led the charge on a referendum that was a non-binding referendum that asked the voters of Chester County if they would support a $50 million bond issue for buying development rights to farmland and open space. And the referendum, even though it was non-binding, passed about 90% in favor, which is absolutely remarkable. And so the following year, the Chester County Commissioners, came up with a large amount of money to start preserving land. And at the time, I was working for Lancaster County, and our county commissioners sort of got the message. And in 1990, they passed a bond for $18 million. We're a little cheaper in Lancaster County, you have to understand that. But still, that $18 million really got our farmland preservation program going in a very, very big way. So again, I want to thank Chester County for taking the lead on that, because it was really a very important step. And as Brian mentioned, nearly 30% of the county is preserved as open space or agricultural land. I want to point out in the slide over here on the left, you see the green area, the big green area there. That actually is a contiguous block of 25,000 acres of preserved land. That is a remarkable accomplishment, absolutely remarkable. And the orange areas there are unprotected farms of 25 or more acres that really do have pretty good potential for preservation in the future. And what is exciting to me in particular is those orange farms are almost all adjacent to already preserved farms. And that's really the key. If you can create these large contiguous blocks of preserved land, you're going to create, the business climate that agriculture needs without complaints about noise and smells and that sort of thing, to get on with the business of farming. So again, here you can see in the upper left, the easements, the agricultural conservation easements that have been acquired in the county. Several townships over in the top right have transfer of development rights programs. We have a few of those in Lancaster County, one of which has been actually quite successful. Back in 1989, there really wasn't much in the way of agricultural zoning anywhere in Chester County, and now there is. And that zoning is often one house per 25 acres, one house per 30 acres. It's good, strong agricultural zoning. The agricultural security areas don't impose any land use restrictions, but what they do is give landowners three benefits. One is township supervisors agree not to enact any nuisance ordinances that would restrict normal farming practices. Second, there's greater protection against eminent domain actions by government agencies. And third, the landowners have the option to apply to the county to sell a conservation easement through the county state program. Something that you've done very, very well in Chester County, and believe me, we are really jealous of this in Lancaster County, is you have this earned income tax revenue source. And of course, this was enabled through a change in state law back, I think, in 1997. And this is a recent vote in Westtown Township to support an earned income tax and real estate tax increase to raise funds to preserve this Revolutionary War historic landmark property and turn some of the acreage into a public park as well. And you can see the vote is basically 2-1 in favor of doing this. And I really love to see these ballot measures, because often I hear about, politicians saying, how people are tired of paying taxes and this sort of thing. And yet I think the real story is that people are willing to tax themselves as long as they feel that the money is going to go to something really tangible and literally in their backyard. So this is kind of a laundry list of successful open space measures since 1998. And this is really pretty remarkable. I mean, there's some significant amounts of money that these townships have raised. And we've had a few townships in Lancaster County, make contributions for, preserving a farm in the township, that sort of thing. But we haven't seen any township, raise the earned income tax as a way to come up with some really serious funding. Now, something I'd like to just share with you for a little bit. This is a publication that I worked on that came out last year. I worked on this for the Lancaster Farmland Trust, and they put in all the beautiful photography. And you can find it on the Lancaster Farmland Trust website there. But it is a really, I think, a very thorough look at the strengths and weaknesses of the farmland preservation program in Lancaster County. What are we doing, well? Where are we falling a little bit short? What do we need to do to improve the program? I've given several presentations on this report, and this is the kind of report literally any county in Pennsylvania could do. And it has, if you take a look at it, I think you'll see there's a lot of useful data in there. One of the things that I wanted to show you, because I think this could be relevant to Chester County, we use 3 techniques for managing growth in Lancaster County. And one of the really important ones is what you see there in pink. These are our urban and village growth areas. These were put in place through the work of the County Planning Commission and the individual municipalities way back in 1993. And they were pretty much done on a handshake. But the idea is this, that you want to limit the extension of sewer and water lines from running all over the countryside, because that's just going to lead to a lot of development. And if you can get the majority or even a large majority of your new population to locate inside these growth areas where you do have central sewer and water and schools and all those good urban services. Maybe you can, minimize the sprawl that has eaten up so much land, throughout Pennsylvania and really throughout the United States. So that's been pretty successful. The idea was to have inside these growth areas enough buildable land to support development for the next 20 years. And the way the boundaries were drawn in 1993, what we're finding out now is probably there was enough buildable land for the next 40 years. But at least it was a way to get the process started. And we actually got buy-in from the development community, which was very, very important. So the other important technique is the agricultural zoning. We have more than half of the county zone for agriculture, usually at 1 house per 25 acres. And then, as you can see, we have over 115,000 acres of preserved farmland. In a number of cases, especially up here in the northwest part of the county, you can see there are a lot of preserved farms right up against those growth boundaries. Those growth boundaries will not expand if they're up against a preserved farm. In other parts of the county, there will be opportunities for those growth boundaries to expand. But so far, over the last almost 30 years, we've had very, very little expansion of the growth boundaries. And so this is something that, again, if we're looking to add another 115,000 people, it's going to be a challenging decision to figure out where and how much to expand these growth boundaries. But one of the real tenets of smart growth is compact development, and that's what we've really been trying to do here with these growth boundaries. I want to add that there was in 2000 legislation in Pennsylvania that passed that allows any county and municipality to use growth boundaries. But to date, to my knowledge, Lancaster is still the only county that's used this technique in Pennsylvania. But I think it's something that could have some application in Chester County. I had mentioned that you want to maintain 20 years of buildable land inside your growth areas, and so in our central Metro Lancaster area around the city of Lancaster, there are about 11 municipalities, including the city. We still have about 12,000 or so buildable acres. But of those acres inside the growth area, only about a quarter of them are now available for development. So we're starting to, feel a little bit of the pinch. Having said that, some of you may have heard recently that Lancaster County was named the #1 place to retire in the United States. And that's probably going to mean we're going to end up with even more people than we projected. But so far, affordability of housing is still, fairly good. One of the real challenges we have, though, inside our growth areas is we would like to have 85% of the new growth happen inside our growth areas. We would like developers to be building an average of 7.5 to 8 units to the acre, which is enough density that will support public transit. But so far, the development density has been about 4 to 4.5 units to the acre, which is more of a suburban density and really will not support public transit. So we still have some things to work on here. So I might just suggest that you think about how urban and village growth boundaries could work in Chester County. I think one of the real strengths of this approach is it results in a lot more cooperation among local governments, and that's very much for the good. And that's my presentation. As I like to say, unlike most professors, I do get tired of the sound of my own voice. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I very much look forward to answering any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so we are going to move to our QA portion of the program. Maybe if we can bring up our panel. I'm going to make another call to our attendees and invite you to post some questions into the Q&A feature in Zoom. There's the Q&A button down at the bottom. You can open up the interface and type in some questions. We do have one question so far. So, again, encourage you all to submit some questions. A lot of great stuff presented by all three of our panelists. So I'll just jump right into the first question. So first question is, runoff from farms contribute to stormwater and water quality issues in Chester County, but many municipalities exempt ag activities from stormwater management regulations. What tools would you recommend to manage stormwater runoff at a municipal level?
Dan, I have to say that question comes from a former PhD student of mine. I didn't plant her in the audience, but I just wanted to be upfront about that. I think one of the on the one hand, one of the great things about the Pennsylvania Farmland Preservation Program is it requires that a farmer have a soil and water conservation plan on the farm before the conservation easement goes on. And I have seen over time significant improvement in the conservation practices on farms as they go through that preservation process of putting a conservation easement on. On the other hand, I think that farmers really need to be responsible and minimize stormwater runoff.
So another call for questions, but while the attendees are thinking of good questions to post, I'm actually going to pose one actually to Brian, kind of pull the thread a little bit more on the growth boundaries topic.
Mm-hmm.
In Landscapes 3, you have the different rural or urban centers, and I wasn't sure if the growth boundary concept was something that the Planning Commission was considering to kind of maybe take it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would view the terminology of growth boundary as kind of a way of defining the edges of the growth areas that we have identified in Landscapes 3. So, conceptually, what we're doing is saying where you have that edge is a growth boundary. I haven't used that terminology, but, working within the municipality's planning code, we're saying communities, you can choose to essentially create growth boundaries by zoning more intensely, as Tom mentioned, in these growth areas to direct growth, ideally using transfer development rights to transfer the development in that has been used successfully in Chester County or in Manheim Township and Lancaster County as some examples. And then to limit your sewer and water as much as you can. You're not always in control of those, of water in particular, but your sewer area to limit it to those areas. Could there be kind of a campaign to kind of talk about growth boundary terminology as a way of helping crystallize this concept of layering on these different things that we're allowed to do? It's an interesting approach. And I think it is really helped in Lancaster County, people kind of and the communities kind of understand what's being done. We don't have a technical growth boundary option in Pennsylvania the same way that you might have in the Northwest of the United States. So it's a little different, but we have the tools in place that can really get you a result that would be, similar to a growth boundary that you might have out in Oregon or something like that.
Thank you.
Let me just add that I do live inside an urban growth boundary.
Yeah, no, I mean, Lancaster County's chosen that terminology. They've used it and used it successfully. They have zoned appropriately in those areas. Absolutely. It's just not something that's structured into the municipality's planning code as kind of a term where and with legal backing related to that terminology. However, you can definitely accomplish it with all the tools that we have in place. Little doubt about it.
Great. So the next question we have is, are resource limitations anything that should be considered in zoning or planning?
Tom, you want to take that one? You want me to run with that?
I'll let you take the lead on it, Brian. Go ahead.
So resource limitations was the terminology. Absolutely. And it is a very useful idea to keep in mind in all aspects of your planning. And you want to understand what your resource limitations are, whether it's transportation, housing, the carrying capacity of the land, the environmental impact. There's all kinds of resource limitations that should be taken into account when you're doing your planning. Once upon a time, there's a type of zoning called performance zoning that was very popular. It was developed in Bucks County, actually, in southeast Pennsylvania, primarily by someone called Lane Kendig. And this really took what would be where you look at a property and say, what can we do? What are our impacts going to be? What are our resources on the land? It's very difficult to administer, so it hasn't expanded as much, but absolutely in the planning stage, you got to take all that stuff into account.
Let me just follow up on the resources issue. I might come at it from a little bit different perspective, and that is to say, if you're going to be using, regulations like zoning, do you need a full-time planner, on staff? And is your municipality big enough that you can afford to have, somebody handle, all the work that might entail? And I think that can be a challenge, especially for really small townships.
Great. So someone asks, is there a Chester County resource where interested citizens can view a map of properties which have been conserved?
Yes, we have an online map you can go to see properties that have a conservation easement. We're in the process of updating and creating a map that shows where the easement is within those properties. So if you go to the Planning Commission website, you can see that map. Now, if they're looking to, I don't know if we have a parcel layer on top of that map or not offhand, but it's something we can get to someone.
Okay, so this one's for Kim. I still see vocal opposition to roundabouts in the community. What strategies have you found effective in addressing those concerns?
Well, David, maybe you're talking to somebody in my own family, as it would be for vocal opposition to roundabouts. I mean, it's there's a lot of people that need education as to the improvements that those provide, including in my household. But I will tell you, I have driven with my wife through the roundabouts they built at Hershey. I don't know if you've been up through Hershey. They're beautiful roundabouts. But as we approached one, my wife went right to the brake. There's no traffic coming, and for example, it's just unfamiliarity, and I think that's generally the case of it. Most people are unfamiliar with them, and so any change is perceived as being bad. There's still the perception that a modern roundabout is unsafe, like a circle, right? And then they talked about Jersey and removing circles over there. I think primarily what we're trying to do is mostly with education. And if you've seen, we put out press releases every year that tout the safety benefits of single lane roundabouts and the roundabouts that we're building. And so we're trying to implement more roundabouts where they make sense and would be supported by the communities, quite honestly, to build that trust and gain familiarity.
Yeah, and there are resources on the PennDOT website that show videos of how they work and how smooth they are and talk about the safety aspects too. So great. Another one for PennDOT, or George, did you have something to say?
Yes, I did, just briefly. Brian, you're off the hook for this one, but perhaps Tim first and Dan might. Tom, my former professor, second. What really got S.A.V.E. going was concern over the widening of Route 41 and induced capacity, the fact that we thought it would be counterproductive and would bring in the resources of development. What do you think about that? And Tom, could you follow?
Well, I can't really speak to. I very much understand that S.A.V.E. was very much created based on the concern for the sprawl associated with highway improvements, right? Because we had originally looked at bypasses of both Chatham and Avondale as it would be, in making those multi-lane bypasses. And of course, we did walk away from that project, reevaluated purpose and needs, and came to conclusions that we'll just focus on intersection improvements that are appropriate and just locally sponsored type projects. The roundabout, I don't know if you're really coming back to roundabouts or just in general a widening. We are primarily focused with safety at PennDOT, and those roundabouts, we just love them. They have a marked safety improvement, and we've really come to embrace them.
I can think of two places on Route 41 that already have been widened where you do have passing lanes going up some long hills, and you know what I'm talking about. I would, if I lived in Chester County, I probably would just put up with the way things are on Route 41. It seems the traffic, that I've experienced there seems to flow pretty well, but other people may have different experiences with that.
Yes, I think it actually tends to be more of an issue with traffic seasonally going towards Delaware, and just bottlenecks occurring for vacation related traffic. And then of course the other issue is a lot of the freight is not local. It's going to down south and or to other locations.
Yeah, when I go to the Jersey Shore, I go through Avondale, so I'm guilty.
Delaware.
What? Yeah,
Delaware. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that also speaks to some of the benefits of roundabouts is they keep traffic flowing, right? There's not the start stop that creates the backup caterpillar effect. So we'd like to hope that as these get implemented, some of that might be addressed.
And if you don't mind, I'll just jump on that, Dan. So farming is a great example, and it was really somebody speaking to us at the intersection, the skewed intersection of 926 and 41. Having a horse trailer and trying to make a turn or cross that intersection, it's a wide, sprawling intersection, and so one of those things with a roundabout is everybody slows down approaching a roundabout. There's nobody who presses the accelerator in their car as they approach a roundabout. only if they're really going slow to begin with would they ever do something like that. And so just they provide for farm equipment, you name it. I'll stop talking about roundabouts. I love them.
Great. So I'm going to go to another question for PennDOT. Any thought on sharing stormwater management credit with MS4 communities in the Route 1 improvements?
That's an interesting question, and I should say we'd be happy to probably talk to somebody about whatever ideas they might have related to that. I know that some other projects that we're working on up in Bucks County, we're looking at consolidating some basins and had a municipality interested in then taking the credits associated with it and then taking responsibility for the basin. That's probably something they can do a little bit. Municipalities can do maintenance of facilities sometimes a little better than we can.
Okay. All right. So the next question, does Dr. Daniels anticipate the plain section community or the plain sect community being more interested in land preservation in the future, or will they remain steadfast in not wanting to participate in government development right purchases?
That's a very interesting question, and I think you'd be surprised at how many farms the Amish have actually preserved by themselves. And one of the reasons that the Lancaster Farmland Trust was created was simply because the Amish really and Plain Mennonites did not want to work with our county government program. And the Lancaster Farmland Trust has been phenomenally successful. They've preserved about 35,000 acres, over 500 farms. And they even moved their offices from the city of Lancaster out to Strasburg so they could be closer to the Plain Sect people. So we have a lot of preserved farms by the Amish, and the Amish, of course, will not hesitate to buy a farm, even if it's been preserved with government money. It's also interesting. In my land preservation class last night, as I was coming home, I was reading one of the term papers, and it was about a 70-acre Amish farm in Honeybrook, and owned by a Mr. Stoltzfus, of course. And this had been done by the Brandywine Conservancy. So I think land trusts really have an edge in working with the Plain Sect community. We have a couple of maybe 3 or 4 examples in Lancaster County where Amish have actually sold a conservation easement to the county program, but they really have not hesitated to work with the Lancaster Farmland Trust. And again, I would see the Brandywine being able to do that in Chester County.
Yeah, I would just add that Brandywine's really been doing great work with the Plain Sect community in Chester County, and been doing it very successfully too.
Great. So as professional planners, are you seeing the benefits of more transparency in terms of land use decisions, especially at the municipal level?
I guess I'll start with that one. That's a tough one. And I would say that, big fan of transparency. I think it can be a mixed bag. So it kind of depends what you're trying to do on whether a community is able to be effective in what they want to do planning wise. But I think you need to get the public as involved as possible in the process. The question more is, has it made a difference for those communities in having better planning? And I guess I'll just say that the problem is related to kind of turnover of people involved in communities and things like that, and change. So we're facing in East Vincent Township a challenge to their agricultural zoning. It's a validity challenge. There's been a lot of changeover of the municipal officials there. So they're going through a very transparent process now, but there is an understanding that you can legally defend your agricultural zoning. So I don't know if I'm quite answering the question, but I think that we see cycles in municipalities of officials that is kind of hurting us a little bit more recently. So a lot of people who are out there preserving open space, advocating for it, that generation's moved on a little bit, and that's why we're doing that open space outreach effort that we are. Anyway, I didn't quite answer it. Tough question, Blair, but I'll pass it over to Tom.
Yeah, it is a tough question. Let me try to give you a few examples. When we have had a couple of very large proposals for developments actually inside our urban growth areas that have been denied. And even, this is basically almost like a new town concept inside our urban growth areas. And, if you want a planned community, you want mixed use, you want all those things, these proposals have provided that, but they're so big that, the local planners and the public at large just really can't get their heads around it. Some of the proposals are obviously better than others, but it's led to a lot of, public debate. Smaller projects inside urban growth areas have had very little opposition. They haven't really had these, NIMBY battles, the not in my backyard, types of people. On the other hand, something that has really helped us enormously is the township supervisors have staunchly supported agricultural zoning in Lancaster County. We have had very little agricultural land rezoned out of agriculture in the last 30 years.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next question. It really speaks to, the difference between comparing planning and zoning within our own regions, but do we ever, are there any other regions of the country or other countries that are doing things differently that we should explore, kind of looking at and getting ideas from?
Yeah, I'm going to mention one that I think you'll find a little bit surprising, and it's an example from Germany, actually. And in Germany, there was a village expansion, and one of the things that we have not done well in the United States is village expansion. We tend to run, commercial strips, a mile or two or three out into the countryside, that sort of thing, rather than maintaining, a real, compact sense of the village. And so in this one example that I can think of, and it appeared in Planning Magazine, actually, a number of years ago, these people, the landowners, pooled their property, and then they bring in these infrastructure companies that put in the infrastructure, the sewer, the water, the roads. And it just added about 80 acres to the edge of this village, and then it stopped. And so they maintained that nice edge between the village and the countryside. And that's something that we don't do a really good job of in the United States, is maintaining those kind of edges between built up areas and the countryside.
I'll just quickly add that I think there are great examples in Europe, elsewhere in the country too. And how do we make those fit our Pennsylvania context is always an interesting challenge, I'll say. And often we're trying to convince the local officials to do better planning. And historically, if we're saying, this was done in California, it's like, okay, they stopped listening to you right away because you mentioned California. So, it's great to find local examples. And I think we have them scattered around the state, things that we can point to, such as, just on some things Lancaster County has done that Tom pointed out. some things that Chester County has done well. And so you have to kind of grab bits and pieces from different places often to make your case.
Okay. Any updates from PennDOT on the Route 30 bypass widening project?
Thank you. So we've broken the 30 bypass up into basically 4 to 5 projects, as it would be. The projects on the western end of the bypass are pretty much focused around the associated interchange. So we've got a project where it terminates at Route 10, a project at the Airport Road interchange, and a project at the Route 82 interchange. Each one of those had their own logical termini, as it would be, and unique issues, right? So we broke those up, and those are advancing in preliminary engineering at this point. I'd say we've kind of identified preferred alternatives for how we would advance the Airport Road interchange, and you'd see those details on our website, as well as the Route 82 interchange. We're still looking at the interchange or how it would terminate with Route 10. We proposed, I think, a new traffic signal, and kind of teeing in business Route 30. But the folks in Harrisburg who were reviewing some of the documentation that we were providing related to what we call a access report, they asked us to relook at some of the other options that we had previously discontinued, and try to see about whether we could eliminate that traffic signal, which we're currently looking through. Reeseville Road is another interchange which we're thinking about breaking out as its own project, because we don't see the need for really capacity adding, so to speak, primarily at the Reeseville Road. Where we have seen congestion occurring is primarily from Route 340 to Downingtown, as it would be, right? So we're looking at doing something different on the 30 bypass than what we've traditionally done with most of our highway widening projects. We have what we would describe as a peak hour problem, where there's just not enough capacity on the main line for 2 to 3 hours a day, right? So one of the things that we're looking at doing as part of the corridor is, rather than widening and making it 3 lanes in each direction and operating it as such, we're thinking of operating it as using a wider inside shoulder, as it would be, as the 3rd lane directionally. In the AM, it would be opened for traffic traveling towards Downingtown. In the PM, it would be open for the other side traveling, west, right? And there would be lane control over top of the freeway, as it would be, that tells you when the lane would be in use or not in use, right? So our traffic management center would open lanes as needed, and this is something that we've seen other states doing, something that we've started looking at doing on various corridors. 30 is probably the biggest corridor where we're actually doing a reconstruction project and thinking about including it as part of the reconstruction project.
I'd just like to add to this one that we are fighting for funding on this project, and this isn't Tim's area. It's what we end up doing. It's why my hair's gray. Is we fight for money, and in 2019, much of the money for this widening got kind of pushed out of the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. We got some of that back in, but we didn't get all of it back, and there is, some opposition to widening highways and situations in the suburbs that we are fighting, because we don't want to see people just sitting in traffic there. We have done some smart growth. There's been a lot of concentrated development in the suburban and urban centers there. The county's invested in the centers. We've invested in open space, concentrate growth in this area. That's where we need to make some highway improvements. So we don't have all the money we need, and we may ask for support at times from folks to help us in our advocacy for that money, specifically for this project.
Yeah, Tim, that idea of the shifting lane to hit time periods seems like a pretty interesting approach to solving a problem that maybe historically might have just been putting in extra lanes, right, that are only necessary or for a certain amount of time. But I think that kind of novel thought process, thinking outside the box to find unique solutions to those things, that sounds really encouraging to me. Okay, I'm gonna go on to another question about roads and growth. Does PennDOT have traffic growth projections on Route 41?
I would say that we have numbers, as it would be. We pretty much, we're not advancing projects that are adding capacity, so to speak. So we don't necessarily have, I should say, anticipated induced growth kinds of traffic projections. I think the region DVRPC really does the projections for the 41 corridor, as it would be for us, and they kind of look at it almost countywide for how traffic's anticipated to grow. PennDOT doesn't necessarily look at traffic growth. 141, we kind of rely on the region's numbers.
Okay. The question kind of goes on about triggering what triggered widening in 322, and then, you know, what might cause re-looking at widening 41. So
sorry, I missed the rest of that question. I mean, obviously the Conchester Highway widening project is one that dates back decades, as it would be, and the highway had its name as being the Killer Conchester, as it would be, right, because of the terrible accidents that had actually occurred on the corridor, right. We are in the process of reconstructing and widening that corridor. Again, that was a project that was championed, I want to sit back and say by the locals, and that was what they wanted to see done. That's why the county programmed it and why we were advancing it. I don't see a project like that occurring on 41. I mean, those kinds of decisions about looking at big projects like that kind of often get driven by the county. I mean, PennDOT's mostly interested in maintaining our infrastructure, and we don't have sufficient funds to do that readily, quite honestly. So the thought of just expanding without a desire for it is just, it's not on PennDOT's proposed priority list.
okay, so Ricky Saunders has asked to speak to the group, so we can unmute her, and really appreciate all the answers to all the questions. Ricky, I think you can unmute yourself and you should be able to speak.
She may be busy holding a horse right now.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. What I'm not hearing from anybody, or maybe I missed it, is that you're not addressing water or drinking water, and also the impervious surfaces that you're going to be creating and the flooding that does occur, and we see it just getting worse and worse. Would somebody like to jump in on that?
Tom, you want to go? You want me to go,
Yeah.
Tim?
I'll take a shot at it.
Right.
And
Or Chester County Planning. I don't, yes, great, thank you.
it's a very good question, Ricky. There's no question that the more sprawl you have, the more impervious surface you end up with. It's roads, it's just, pavement for new subdivisions, all that sort of thing. And the challenge, again, though, is
Not just roads, though.
Yeah, if you're going to have, more compact development, you need green infrastructure to go along with it to soak up the precipitation and minimize the runoff. And, I work in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia has been doing some really great things with stormwater management. They have a stormwater utility fee, so you have to pay for the amount of impervious surface you have on your property. That money is then used for greening up everything from schoolyards to putting in tree trenches along streets to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that's going into the Schuylkill and the Delaware rivers. We have to do that also in our boroughs and our wherever we're going to have a growth area. We have to mandate the use of green infrastructure to really capture probably the first inch of rainfall in a 24-hour event. That's the standard in Philadelphia.
We know what
Yeah, and
happened.
I'll jump in then and add that the county did adopt a new stormwater ordinance. It's county-wide. Then we work with our municipality. Sina Bien, is a participant on this, is leading up that effort as the director of our Water Resources Authority. So everyone's got to have stormwater for the new impervious coverage or development that occurs. Recognizing this, the county is still investing a lot of money in open space preservation. And we've got our conservation districts doing a special effort in the Chesapeake Bay watershed to improve our riparian corridors, to do stream bank restoration projects. And that's happening all over the county, actually, with some of our nonprofits. We also, the Planning Commission, have a new effort really focused on trees and the importance of trees. We've been losing too much of our urban tree canopy. We're pushing that out quite a bit. We need to be all out there planting more trees because increased flooding is not going away. When you have a 100-year storm every few years, you got a problem. Downingtown and Coatesville in particular took heavy hits in the Ida flooding, as did Chadds Ford area. It was pretty bad. And, it's an issue.
Could I ask the PennDOT gentleman, could you put shoulders on, how you have those bricks that have triangles in them? They do work on the Skyway in Virginia. Can we put those when you do these things?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the what you're speaking of, Ricky. I'll have to look into that. But I do know that we are working with municipalities, such as with the city of Philadelphia. On Cobbs Creek Parkway, for example, we're going to be working with the water department to take some of the impervious surface that we have on the cartway and add like grassed medians where previously a center turn lane or left turn lanes would have been, and we're kind of trying to do what we can to do appropriate maintenance. I'll say it that way. We've worked with DEP where some of our stormwater management facilities that we're now building and maintaining where we wouldn't need to cut the trees down that want to grow in those facilities, for example, right? So we're going to be looking to work with DEP to reclassify some of our stormwater management facilities to allow for that natural diversification, rather than just have mown basins, and we're looking to partner with anybody related to stormwater and trying to address problems.
Thank all of you. I thank you all.
Great. So that is all the time we have for questions, and that concludes our program for the evening. Again, I want to thank Tim, Brian, and Tom for your participation, and to all the attendees for joining us. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You were great.